She was banned from the Alpha's mating ceremony until the Alpha King noticed she missing. Banners of deep crimson and silver fluttered against the gray sky, carrying the emblem of the Alpha King, Kale, whose power and pride were whispered in every corner of the land. Today was the mating ceremony, a grand event held once every decade, where the strongest and most destined of the kingdom's lineage would claim their mates. The streets were alive with nobles, soldiers, and commoners alike, their eyes wide with awe and curiosity. Every corner of the palace sparkled with lantern light, and the scent of incense drifted like a ghost through the halls. Yet in a quiet alley beyond the reach of the ceremonial square, Alara stood alone. The soft wind carried the distant murmur of music and cheers, but she could not enter. She had been banned from the ceremony, a punishment for a scandal long past, one that had stained her family's name. Her lineage, though noble, had fallen from grace, and the law was clear. No one of her blood could step foot in the grand hall of the Alpha King. Alara's fingers brushed the edge of the worn cloak she wore, its deep green fabric barely protecting her from the chill. She was a shadow at the edge of a celebration, her heart both heavy with longing and burning with defiance. Her eyes, dark and unyielding, followed the glittering crowd from a distance, searching for a glimpse of the one who had unknowingly claimed her thoughts for months. Kale, the Alpha King, a man of immense strength whose presence seemed to bend the world around him. He was feared, respected, and adored in equal measure. Rumors claimed he could see the truth in anyone, and Alara often felt that he had already seen her, though they had never spoken. That thought, wild and dangerous, made her heart tighten. As the ceremony began, the great doors of the palace opened, revealing the golden hall. Nobles in flowing robes, adorned with the sigils of their families, marched in with proud steps. Music, both haunting and beautiful, echoed off the marble floors. Each noble paired with their destined mate in a display of power, grace, and heritage. The energy of the room was intoxicating, yet suffocating, reminding Alara of the walls that now separated her from this world. She leaned against the cold stone of the palace's outer wall, trying to make herself small, invisible. But the truth was, she could not forget him. Even from afar, Kale's presence tugged at her soul, a magnetic force she could neither resist nor fully understand. He moved through the crowd like a shadow of authority, tall, dark, and commanding. Every step he took seemed measured, precise, as if the world itself adjusted around him. The ceremony went on, and Alara's attention wavered between the crowd and the sky above. The clouds were heavy, a gray sea threatening rain. Some say the weather reflected the mood of the kingdom, and perhaps they were right, for tonight the air was thick with secrets, desires, and unspoken truths. A sudden movement drew her attention, a flash of black and silver, a cloaked figure moving swiftly through the outer gardens. Her curiosity pricked at her heart. She had always been drawn to the forbidden, to the edges of rules and walls. Carefully she followed, her steps silent on the cold stone paths. The figure stopped by a fountain, its water reflecting the dim moonlight like a pool of liquid silver. Kale. Alara froze. The Alpha King stood alone, his eyes scanning the horizon as though seeking something or someone. Her pulse quickened. He was closer than she had ever dared to imagine, yet still far enough to make her feel invisible, like a whisper in the wind. She wanted to turn away, to retreat into safety, yet every part of her ached to remain. Kale's gaze lifted slightly, as though he sensed her presence. He did not call out, did not accuse. He simply looked, and the weight of his stare made her heart hammer against her chest. For a brief moment it felt as if the world had narrowed to two, her and him. All the noise of the ceremony, all the golden light and laughter, vanished, leaving only the pull between them. But the moment passed. Kale's attention shifted, and he walked toward the palace's inner hall, leaving Alara in the shadows. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her legs trembling. She felt foolish for daring to imagine that he might have noticed her. Yet deep inside, a small flame of hope sparked. Maybe, just maybe, he had. Night deepened over the kingdom and the streets began to empty. Nobles returned to their chambers, guards patrolled the stone corridors, and the echoes of music faded into the cold silence of the palace walls. Alara remained where she was, torn between leaving and staying. She could hear whispers carried on the wind, ancient stories of forbidden love, of destiny's cruel hands, of those who dared to challenge the laws of the Alpha. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden rustling. From the shadows, a small, spectral figure emerged, a fox, its fur glimmering with faint silver light. It stared at her with intelligent eyes, tilting its head as if it understood more than it should. Alara knelt slowly, extending a hand. The fox did not shy away. Instead, it approached, brushing against her palm. "You have power," a voice whispered from the darkness. Not her own, not entirely. A voice older than the stones, deeper than the wind. Power that belongs to no one and yet to him. Alara's heart skipped. The fox's eyes seemed to glow brighter, and she realized she was holding more than an animal in her hand. She was holding a promise, a warning, a truth she had not yet dared to face. Her mind raced with questions. What power did she truly possess? Why did the voice call her connection to Kale? And most terrifyingly, what would happen if the Alpha King discovered her here in the shadows where she was forbidden? She rose slowly, keeping the fox at her side. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to disappear into the dark forest beyond the palace walls. Yet she could not turn away. She was drawn to the invisible thread connecting her to Kale, a thread she felt tightening with every heartbeat. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Kale stood at the balcony overlooking the ceremony's emptying grounds. His eyes scanned the crowd, the gardens, the shadows, but something was missing. A presence he had expected to see, a spark in the dark corners of the night, was gone. His chest tightened with a sensation he could not name. It was not anger, not annoyance, but something sharper, colder, and more insistent. "Where are you?" he murmured to the night, his voice a low rumble that seemed to shake the stones themselves. Alara, crouched behind the fountain in the outer gardens, heard the distant sound, felt it in her bones, and shivered. For the first time she realized that she had not been invisible to him. Somehow he had known. Somehow he had noticed her absence. The fox at her side twitched its ears, sensing her rising fear and excitement. Its silver tail flicked, stirring the air like a whisper. Alara pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm the storm inside her. She had longed for him, dreamed of him, feared him. But now, knowing that he might seek her out, that the Alpha King himself could notice her missing presence, her heart was caught between thrill and dread. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and incense, the echoes of the ceremony, and the heavy weight of destiny. Alara knew that the night would not end quietly. Something had begun, a chain of events that could not be stopped, a story written in shadows, longing, and power. She stayed, hidden, heart-pounding, knowing that when Kale found her, everything in her life, and perhaps everything in the kingdom, would change forever. And as the moon reached its peak in the sky, casting silver light across the garden, Alara felt it. The pull, stronger than ever before. The connection between her and the Alpha King, unbroken, undeniable, and dangerous. Somewhere in the palace, Kale's gaze searched the shadows, sharp and relentless. Somewhere in the night, Alara's heart waited, trembling, for the moment their paths would finally cross. Tonight, the rules of the kingdom no longer mattered. Tonight, destiny had begun to stir. The night had grown colder, and a thin mist hung over the outskirts of the kingdom. The grand lights of the palace, which had once seemed so distant to Alara, now appeared as faint glimmers against the black horizon. She moved silently through the twisting paths of the cursed forest, her cloak brushing against the wet leaves. The silver fox, still by her side, seemed to guide her as much as warn her. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight in a way that made her feel both comforted and uneasy. She did not know why she had come this far. Something in the air, something that stirred when Kale had searched for her, pulled her deeper into the shadows. Every instinct told her to turn back to seek safety, but her heart would not allow it. She felt the thread between her and the Alpha King stretch across the miles, pulling her forward, as if destiny itself had taken hold. A sudden sound froze her footsteps, deliberate and powerful. She crouched behind a twisted tree, her heart hammering. The footsteps drew closer, and then she saw him. Kale. He moved like a shadow, silent yet commanding, his dark cloak blending with the night. His eyes scanned the forest, sharp and alert, every movement precise. He did not speak, he did not call her name. He simply searched as if he knew she would be somewhere near, somewhere hidden. Alara's breath caught. She wanted to run, yet every step she had taken led her here, and now, facing him, she could not turn away. Kale's presence was overwhelming, more than she had imagined. His strength, his calm authority, even in the darkness, made her pulse quicken. "You shouldn't be here," Kale said finally, his voice low and steady, like a river flowing through stone. "It is dangerous for someone like you." Alara stepped out from the shadows, her eyes meeting his. "And yet you came looking for me," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though her chest felt tight. Kale's gaze did not waver. "You are not someone I can ignore," he said simply, and for the first time, Alara felt the weight of his attention like a tangible force pressing against her. The forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with whispers of old magic. Shadows danced among the trees, carrying secrets and warnings. Alara could feel the pulse of the land beneath her feet, as if it recognized the connection she shared with Kale. Every step she took seemed to echo in the air, a rhythm in tune with the invisible thread between them. "You are reckless," Kale said, taking a step closer. "The laws of this kingdom are clear. You were forbidden from the ceremony for a reason, and yet here you are." Alara lifted her chin, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "And yet here you are," she said softly. "Perhaps some rules are meant to be broken." Kale studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words against something deeper. Then, without another word, he extended his hand. It was an unspoken gesture, a bridge across the divide of law and fear. Hesitation gripped her, but something in his eyes, the honesty, the raw intensity, drew her forward. She took his hand, and the contact was electric, yet strangely grounding. The fox moved ahead, leading them along a narrow path that twisted deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller, their branches knotted together like guardians over an ancient secret. The air was thick with magic, and Alara felt it stirring within her, a warmth and a power she had never acknowledged. She realized that her lineage, the one that had caused her banishment, carried more than shame. It carried strength. A strength she had only begun to understand. Kale did not speak as they walked. His hand held hers lightly, a tether, and yet his eyes remained vigilant, scanning the shadows as if he expected danger to spring from the darkness at any moment. Alara noticed the faint tremor in his jaw, the way his fingers tightened ever so slightly around hers. Even the Alpha King, the man who seemed unshakable, had moments of vulnerability when faced with the unknown. The silence between them was broken by a sudden howl, a sound both mournful and menacing. The trees shivered, and the mist thickened. Alara's grip on Kale's hand tightened instinctively. "Stay close," Kale whispered. "This forest is not kind to those unprepared." They moved cautiously, and soon they came upon a clearing where the air shimmered with an unnatural light. In the center stood a figure, a guardian of the forest, ancient and formidable. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly fire, and its form seemed to shift with the mist. It spoke without words, a presence that resonated directly in the mind. "You should not be here," the guardian intoned, voice echoing like the wind through the mountains. "The one you seek carries a destiny forbidden. Step closer and you risk awakening what should remain asleep." Kale's hand tightened around Alara's. "I do not care," he said firmly. "I will protect her, whatever it takes." Alara felt a surge of courage at his words. Despite the danger, despite the power of the Guardian, she realized that Kale believed in her in a way she had never experienced. His faith, his trust, gave her strength she had not known she possessed. The Guardian shifted, moving as if to block their path. Shadows twisted around its form, sharp and menacing. But Alara felt something stir within herself, a pulse of energy, a connection to the magic of the forest that she had always feared. She took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth, the power that coursed through her veins. Slowly, the shadows began to retreat, bowing to the presence of her untamed magic. Kale's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time he looked at her not as someone he needed to protect, but as an equal. "You have power," he murmured. "Power I did not expect." Alara nodded, her chest heaving. "It is part of me," she said, "part of my blood, and now it must be part of what saves us." Together they moved forward, their steps synchronized, hearts beating in unison. The Guardian did not stop them, but its eyes followed, glowing like embers, as if testing their resolve. As they passed through the forest, the tension between them grew not through words but through presence. Each glance, each shared breath carried unspoken feelings. Alara realized that her longing for Kale was no longer one-sided. She could feel the pull of his thoughts, the weight of his concern, the spark of something deeper hidden beneath his stern exterior. They reached a small glade where the moonlight broke through the trees, silver and serene. Here, the forest's magic felt calmer, softer, yet it hummed with quiet intensity. Alara knelt beside a small stream, cupping the water in her hands. The reflection showed her face, pale and determined, but her eyes held a fire she could not deny. Kale stood beside her, silent, his gaze fixed on her reflection. "You are braver than I thought," he said quietly, "and stronger, perhaps stronger than even I am." Alara looked up, meeting his eyes. In that moment the forest seemed to hold its breath. The pull between them, electric and undeniable, was no longer a distant thread. It was a force that neither could resist. Yet both understood the danger. Their bond, though powerful, was forbidden. To act on it openly would invite the wrath of the kingdom, the judgment of the council, and the fury of ancient laws. "You must trust me," Kale said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I will not let anything harm you. Not the forest, not the Guardian, not the laws of men. I will protect you." Alara's heart swelled with conflicting emotions, fear, longing, hope, and defiance. She nodded, her hand brushing against his. "I trust you," she said, "even if it means stepping into the unknown." The night deepened, and the forest seemed to shift around them. Shadows moved, whispers rose, and the distant howl of unseen creatures echoed through the trees. Yet in that glade, under the silver light of the moon, Kale and Alara stood together, bound by trust and a connection that defied rules. But their peace was not to last. From the far edge of the glade, a ripple of darkness emerged, a new presence, powerful and menacing. The fox growled, its fur bristling, its silver glow flaring. Alara and Kale instinctively stepped back, hearts pounding in unison. The forest trembled. The Guardian's warning echoed in their minds. Some destinies are forbidden for a reason, and some forces will test even the strongest bonds. Alara felt her pulse quicken, not from fear, but from anticipation. The night was far from over, and the path ahead promised danger, magic, and revelations she was only beginning to understand. Kale's hand found hers once more. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." Alara nodded, feeling the strength of his presence in every fiber of her being. Their bond, forged in shadows and longing, was a force neither the forest nor the laws of men could easily break. And as the darkness shifted, drawing closer, Alara realized one thing with terrifying clarity. Their journey had only just begun. The forest had grown quiet after the first ripple of shadow passed, but the air still thrummed with danger. Mist coiled between the trees like living spirits, and the faint silver glow of the fox seemed brighter, more urgent. as if warning Alara and Kale that their trial was only beginning. Alara tightened her grip on Kale's hand, feeling the steady strength of his presence. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice trembling not from fear but from anticipation. "Why does it feel alive?" Kale's dark eyes scanned the surrounding trees. "It is older than the kingdom itself," he said slowly. "Magic like this does not belong to men. It remembers those who enter. It tests them. We must be careful." Alara nodded, her chest tight with resolve. She could feel the pulse of her own blood, the quiet power of her lineage stirring inside her. Her family had been branded with shame, yes, but their blood carried more than disgrace. It carried strength. She had begun to understand it here, in the shadows, with Kale at her side. A sudden movement in the mist made both of them freeze. From the depths of the trees emerged the guardian, larger and more imposing than before. Its eyes burned like molten gold, its form shifting like smoke in the wind. The air grew heavy, and even Kale's usual calm was tinged with tension. "You are close to what should not be awakened," the guardian said, its voice both echoing and grounding, resonating deep in their minds. "Leave now or face the consequences." Kale's jaw tightened. "We will not leave," he said firmly. "She is not a threat, and I will not allow anything to harm her." Alara felt a surge of pride and fear. His words wrapped around her like armor. She realized that she was not merely being protected. Kale saw her, truly saw her, and believed in her strength. That belief was more powerful than any shield, more potent than any law that had cast her out. The guardian shifted, circling them like a predator testing its prey. Shadows stretched along the forest floor, twisting and writhing. Alara could feel the tension in the air, the pressure of magic pressing against her senses. She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the rhythm of her heartbeat, the warmth that pulsed through her veins. She let her hands hover over the small energy she could now feel inside her, a force tied to both fear and courage. Kale noticed immediately. "Do you feel it?" he asked, voice low but steady. "Your power, it is strong." "Yes," she whispered. "It is part of me, part of who I am." For the first time, Kale did not look at her as fragile or forbidden. He looked at her as equal, as partner, as force. That realization ignited something in Alara, a combination of pride, hope, and longing. They were not just bound by circumstances. They were bound by choice, by trust, by the quiet magic that had always linked their souls. The guardian let out a low, rumbling sound, a warning and a challenge at once. "Then face it," it said. "Only the one who embraces their power can pass. Only together can the bond of the forbidden survive." Shadows leapt from the trees, dark tendrils twisting toward them. The fox hissed and darted between them, its silver glow flaring like a beacon. Alara instinctively raised her hands, drawing on the strength she had discovered. Light surged from her palms, scattering the shadows like mist before the dawn. She gasped at the force of it, feeling both exhilarated and terrified. Kale stepped forward, his own power flaring in response. Though he was trained in strength and command, he felt something new in Alara's magic, something raw and unpredictable. Together they formed a circle of light, pushing back the darkness, standing side by side as equals against the Guardian's trial. The Guardian roared, a sound that shook the trees, yet it did not attack directly. Instead, it tested their bond, sending illusions and visions that clawed at their fears. Kale saw visions of losing Alara, of failing to protect her. Alara saw visions of the kingdom's council casting her out, of shame repeating in endless cycles. Yet through the illusions, they reached for each other. Every time doubt threatened to break them, their hands met, and the connection between them anchored them in reality. The forest trembled under the force of their combined will, the shadows retreating as the Guardian's challenge intensified. "You are strong together," the Guardian finally said, voice echoing like the wind in mountains. "Stronger than any bond I have seen in centuries. But strength alone is not enough. You must accept the consequences of defiance." Alara and Kale exchanged a glance. They understood this was not only about power but choice. The kingdom's laws, the rules that had forbidden her from the ceremony, were part of the past. Now in this moment they had the chance to shape their future. Kale nodded at her. "Are you ready?" he asked. Alara took a deep breath, drawing power from within herself and from the bond they shared. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I am ready." Together they stepped forward. Light surged from Alara, weaving with Kale's presence, forming a barrier that seemed to push against the very air. The guardian roared once more, then slowly, deliberately, it began to dissipate, leaving behind only whispers that faded into the night. For a moment, the forest was silent. Then the mist began to lift, revealing the glade in its full moonlit beauty. Silver light poured down, touching the trees, the stream, and the fox, which now sat calmly at their feet. The air was clear, the shadows gone, and the oppressive weight lifted. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. Kale knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it." Her chest heaved with relief, and a smile, small but radiant, crossed her face. "I never thought I could," she admitted. "But with you," her voice faltered, caught between fear and longing. "I could face anything." Kale's gaze softened, the sternness that usually marked his features melting into something warmer, more human. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "Stronger than even I imagined." They remained there for a long moment, the connection between them deepening beyond words. In the quiet of the glade, under the watchful eyes of the moon, they understood that what had begun in shadows, this bond, this trust, this love, was unbreakable. Yet even as peace settled over the forest, a whisper lingered on the wind. A reminder that the kingdom, with its laws and traditions, would not so easily accept their defiance. There were consequences still to face, battles yet to be fought, and hearts to reconcile. The journey back to the palace was quiet but purposeful. Kale led and Alara followed, their hands brushing occasionally, a small spark igniting each time. The fox trotted alongside them, guiding their steps, its silver light a constant reminder that magic, like love, could illuminate even the darkest paths. When they reached the palace gates, the first hints of dawn were painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The streets were empty, the grandeur of the ceremony now a distant memory. Yet the world had shifted. Where once Alara had been banned, now she walked alongside the Alpha King, a presence neither shadow nor scandal could diminish. Inside the palace, whispers began to stir. Guards, servants, and nobles caught sight of them, noting the strange calm and confidence in Alara's eyes. Kale's hand never left hers, a silent declaration that whatever laws had sought to separate them, they were united. The council would meet. The kingdom would demand answers. The scandal of her lineage would be weighed against the undeniable truth that together, Alara and Kale had faced forces older and stronger than any law and emerged victorious. But for now, in the quiet of the palace, they allowed themselves a moment of reprieve. Kale led Alara to a balcony overlooking the awakening city. The first rays of sunlight touched the spires and rooftops, and she felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. "You changed the night," Kale said quietly, his voice carrying both pride and wonder. "Not just the forest, but everything." Alara looked at him, the bond between them stronger than any fear or rule. "And you changed me," she replied softly. "You showed me what I could be, what I must be." Kale reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Together we can face anything," he whispered. "Even the kingdom, even destiny itself." Alara smiled, feeling the warmth of his words settle in her heart. The shadows had tested them, the forest had challenged them, and the laws of men had sought to keep them apart. But in the end, they had chosen each other, and that choice was more powerful than any magic, any law, or any curse. The city below began to stir, and with it, the knowledge that a new era was beginning. The Alpha King and the woman who had been forbidden had emerged from darkness, stronger, united, and unbroken. Their bond was no longer hidden, no longer fragile. It was a force that could withstand any storm. And though challenges would come, though whispers of old laws and ancient curses would rise again, Kale and Alara faced the future together, their hearts bound by trust, love, and the quiet certainty that they had already faced the impossible and won. The silver fox curled at their feet, its eyes glowing one last time before fading into the morning light. It had been a guide, a warning, and a witness to their courage. And now it was time for the kingdom to see what courage, love, and destiny truly could accomplish. Alara took Kale's hand, holding it tightly. "Let's face it together," she said. "Together," Kale agreed. The sun rose fully over the kingdom, casting golden light across stone and river, marking the dawn of a new story. One of trust, strength, and love that no law or shadow could contain. And in the hearts of the Alpha King and the woman who had once been forbidden, a bond burned brighter than the morning sun, unbroken, unstoppable, and eternal.